Hello, everyone. Welcome to the National Museum of the American Indians program series, Youth in Action, Conversations about Our Future. Thank you for joining us. Youth in Action features young Native activists and changemakers from across the Western Hemisphere who are working towards equity and social justice for Indigenous peoples. My name is Anna Wolcott, and I am a museum educator. Before we begin, we want to take a moment to gratefully acknowledge the Native peoples on whose ancestral homelands we gather, as well as the diverse and vibrant Native communities who make their home here today. This November episode explores how changing theater means changing the world. We'll hear from Indigenous actors and playwrights who are reimagining youth representation on the stage. To facilitate this conversation, we are excited to introduce our moderator, DeLanna Studi. DeLanna Studi is a Cherokee actor and playwright whose TV credits include Dreamkeeper, Edge of America, Shameless, General Hospital, Z Nation, Goliath, and Reservation Dogs. Her theater credits include the first national Broadway tour of August Osage County, Off-Broadway's Informed Consent, and Gloria a Life. She traced her family's footsteps along the Trail of Tears with her father and wrote her play, And So They Walked. She has created plays for Theater for One, the Theater Center, and Period Piece. She is the chair of SAG-AFTRA's National Native Americans Committee and the artistic director of Native Voices at the Ottery. Welcome, DeLanna Studi.
Wado Anna, Osio, the Dawado on DeLanna Dian, Carol Chun Studi Kwood, Chi Chalaki. Hi, I'm DeLanna Studi, and I'm a proud citizen of the Cherokee Nation from Oklahoma. In fact, I'm speaking to you from Cherokee Nation right now. Today, we're going to be having a conversation with young Indigenous actors and playwrights who are not only reimagining how we tell stories on the American stage, but also disrupting the way storytelling is being done. I would like to take this moment to say that I'm a fan of all of their work, and I hope that after this, you will be too if you're not already. So I'm excited to begin this conversation with these change makers and thought leaders. So Wado, thank you. First off, we have Isabella Madrigal, pronouns she, her. She is an enrolled member of the Cahuilla Band of Indians and is of Turtle Mountain Chippewa descent. Isabella, a sophomore at Harvard College, is the co-director of the Indigenous Storytelling nonprofit, which you can find at Indigenous Storytelling on Instagram, which seeks to reclaim the narrative surrounding the Indigenous experience by sharing and uplifting Native voices. Isabella's original play, Mule in Her Heart, was a winner of the 2020 Yale Young Native Storytellers Contest and was featured at the United Nations Girls Speak Out event in 2019, as well as in the 2022 University of California, Riverside's Writers Week. Mule in Her Heart discusses the issue of MMIWG2S+, which is missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit people, while centering community performance and cultural revitalization efforts. Currently, Isabella sits on the Youth Advisory Board for the Center for Native American Youth at the Aspen Institute, where she was previously named a 2020 and 2021 Champion for Change. And she is the treasurer of Natives at Harvard College. Please welcome Isabella Madrigal.
Mia Naneto Isabella Madrigal, Buju and Dinoe Ingana Gamino Gizigat, Wayne Indigo Ojibwe, Wabazeshi, Cahuilla, Indoda, Misquadazi, Waju, Indunjaba, Temecula, and hello, everyone. I just introduced myself in 2 languages, but my name is Isabella. I'm Cahuilla and Turtle Mountain Chippewa, and I'm so excited and honored to be here today with these other amazing panelists to discuss theater and arts and Native creation. So thank you so much for having me, and I'm so excited to get started.
Next, we have Emily Preis, pronouns she, her. Emily is a proud citizen of the Osage Nation and a New York City-based maker, performer, and organizer whose work focuses on community and challenging harmful narratives. Since receiving her BFA, she has collaborated with Mauricio Salgado to turn her thesis, Performance as an Act for Tribal Sovereignty, into a theater studies course offered at NYU. She has worked alongside Yagawihene Oaks, Ty Defoe, Tanis Parenteau, and Ryan Apollonatet Pierce to produce several Native plays for Carnegie Hall's Voices of Hope. For her work as an actress, she was named a Yale Indigenous Performing Arts Program's inaugural Misty Upham Award for Young Native Actors finalist. Her select credits are fairly traceable for the American Bar Association, Where We Belong, the national tour, and Bingo Hall at the AICH. Please welcome Emily Preis.
Hawaii, Emily Preis, Shaje Abring. Hello, my name is Emily. I am so grateful to be here today. I'm so blessed. I'm calling it in from Mannahatta, from Lenape-Hoking, right where the Upper East Side meets Midtown. And I can't wait to hear what these amazing folks have to say.
Next up, we have Tara Moses, pronouns she, her. Tara is a citizen of Seminole Nation of Oklahoma. She's a Muskogee director, award-winning playwright, and she's the artistic director of Red Eagle Soaring and co-founder of Groundwater Arts. She is a participant in New York Stage and Film's inaugural NYSAF Nexus Project 2021, a Cultural Capital Fellow with First Peoples Fund 2020, Fellow with the Intercultural Leadership Institute of 2018 and 2019, member of the Directors Lab at Lincoln Center in 2017, a recipient of the Thomas C. Fischhandler Award in 2016, associate member of SDC and Dramatists Guild member. She is an MFA directing candidate at Brown University and Trinity Rep. Please welcome Tara Moses.
He's Jay Estango Teracho Chefkados. So hello everyone, Tara Moses, and I am currently calling in from Lenape-Hoking on the island of Mannahatta, or what is commonly known as Manhattan, New York.
I'm so excited to learn more about each of you and your work, so let's begin with our questions. We'll start off with Tara. Tara, what got you into theater and why did you decide to pursue it?
Yeah, so I got into theater when I was 8 years old. I was walking home from school one day and I had a very long walk and I walked by the Tulsa Little Spotlight Theater, I think that's what it's called, and they were having auditions that day for Oliver the Musical. And I remember thinking in my 8-year-old brain, I don't want to walk home. I'm a kid. I can look sad. If I have somewhere to go after school, then that'll buy me enough time and someone to pick me up. So I walked in to the audition, and little did I know it was odd to be an unaccompanied minor for this. But fortunately, they cast me. And my family had just moved from the Seminole Nation Reservation to Tulsa. And I was used to being surrounded by a whole bunch of other Native people. And then all of a sudden, I'm not anymore. And so I was really missing community, even though like we would still go back and we still go to other events. But like, you know, it's different where you're not fully immersed in it every day. But in that production of Oliver, what I thought was interesting is that I felt a sense of community, not the same, of course, but one that sort of satisfied a little bit my real need to have a group of people who I could go to. And I just stayed with it ever since, until I figured out that Native theater existed. I was like, you know, this is a nice, plan B option whenever I'm not fully immersed within my community all the time. And so that's why I stuck through it. Was 8-year-old me, made a decision, and I've just been following that lead for the past over 20 years since then. But my theater role models, I mean, I think it started with the late Bill Yellowrobe, because he's the reason why I knew Native theater existed. It was his plays. I found an anthology of them in the basement of my college library, my undergraduate library. And yeah, it just like blew my mind that, you know, I can keep doing this and I can tell stories, which are something that we Native people have been doing since time immemorial. You know, we've been doing theater far before the Greeks figured it out. And I could do it within my culture, within my community. And so I didn't have to keep what I loved, theater, separate from who I am and what I love even more, which is my community. So I put a lot of thanks onto Bill and his works for showing me that I can put these two things together and that it can be possible and it can be doable.
Thank you, Tara. And now we'll go to Isabella. Isabella, what got you into theater and why did you decide to pursue it?
So I started acting when I was pretty young too. So I started on the acting side, being in plays and watching a lot of theater too. I was lucky that I got to see a lot of it growing up. And I loved it. I think storytelling is right, such a integral part of, I think, what I see in my culture, right? When you go to community gatherings, it's usually an elder, but they're ready to tell you a story, and it could be a story about their life, or as you know, it's a traditional story. But I've always just loved listening to those types of things, and I think theater is, obviously that's one of the big reasons that I was really drawn to that, and being able to create a world, suspend the audience disbelief. And I think with live theater, there's such a connection you get to draw between the people on stage, everybody behind the production, and the audience who's there. And so I think that presence between the two of those groups really allows, I think, for change to happen. And that's why theater is so exciting for me. So I continued to kind of study it in high school. I went to a conservatory program for high school, and I studied acting there. But something that I kept coming up against was just the rigidity of the theater spaces that kind of existed, the lack of rules. There was never a native play that we put on that had like a native character or a native playwright. So I think the types of theater that we were reading and performing and learning about theater history, it was kind of exclusionary of all of that kind of world that totally exists and is so rich and has such a wealth of resources out there. So it was kind of out of coming up against that I wanted to start to write my own work, and was inspired by a lot of other Native playwrights to write kind of things that center those experiences that are so meaningful to me, and I think in my community. So it was just kind of important to me that I didn't have to, see in the movies that I was seeing, or even some of the plays, that Native characters had to be these stereotypes or tokens of what, we think Native people exist in, and from a colonial perspective, more as a prop rather than a character. And so I think it was really kind of about being invested in that narrative and thinking about how much I wish that there was something that was just so easily accessible for me, that I wanted to start writing. And so, in terms of theater role models, so many people come to mind. I think, there's just so much amazing work out there. Recently, I guess I got to work briefly on the Rutherford Falls, which is a film thing, a TV show, but with Kimberly Guerrero, and she's at UCR, and she does theater there, and she has an incredible body of work behind her, and projects for film and for things she's writing in the future to kind of really bring Native voices to the forefront. But I think when we're talking about empowering Native youth and encouraging them in their artwork, she really, in my life, has been such an epitome of that. When I first got started writing, the first play I wrote, which was Manual in Her Heart, she offered to read it for me, and kind of give her feedback and say what she thought, and to continue to get to work with her into the future has been really cool. And I think she has so much energy and motivation for this. And there's so many. I think just of the plays I've seen, I got to see the Thanksgiving play by Larissa Fasthorse, and I just was really inspired by the way she approaches and works with the material and works around blocks. And then obviously Mary Catherine Nagel, who's at the Yale Indigenous Performing Arts program, brilliant playwright, but also like incorporating community, incorporating law, and her knowledge of that and the background of that into her work. And so I really think that all these people show me that there's really no limit to what theater can be. And so I think that's really inspired me in what I love to do, which is a lot about bringing in community and just kind of not so much focusing on like Tara was saying, these Western standards of what is good theater, but allowing, community to have a space in that however they want to exist. And I think that's really what can call people or move people when they see live theater, and what really, touches me is that connection there.
And Emily, what got you into theater, and why did you decide to pursue it, and who were your theater role models?
Yeah, so I got into theater because I was a really shy kid. And there's this kind of expectation that shy kids around family, especially grandparents, are supposed to not be shy anymore. Or at least it felt like there was that expectation on me. So, I quickly realized that I could get over my shyness if I had a story to tell. Especially if you can make people laugh, they're not going to judge you for your shyness. I think that was a real roundabout way of like not being shy anymore, but it's kind of how I got started telling stories. I started out as a dancer, and I just wanted more. I wanted to make people laugh. I like making people laugh. And you can do that through dancing, but it's a lot easier when you add words. So got into theater, started doing shows and in school, started thinking, yeah, maybe this is what I want to do. Went to college for theater, did a conservatory program. And about halfway through, I was just kind of feeling dissatisfied. I felt like this might be a bit of a hot take, but I felt like people were patting themselves on the back for gender bending Shakespeare and making Shakespeare current. Like that was the big, we did it, guys. And in the middle of that, my grandmother passed away unexpectedly, and I was the only person in the family in contact with her. Like I'd get little care packages from Oklahoma with plastic forks and knives and apples. Like I didn't have those in New York, but no, it was very sweet of her. And anyways, she passed, and I had to fly back to Oklahoma to, close out her estate and go to the office of the BIA and all of this and transfer her head right to my mom. And I just was like, there's something missing to theater. And I realize now that I think I was missing community, but more so I was missing an engagement in the issues that I felt were important. So after that, I started to explore writing for myself. I started to explore finding Native theater makers, researching them for myself because they sure as heck weren't being taught in any of the institutions that I went to. And I realized that there was this whole lineage, this whole body of work out there that was doing what I needed, what I hungered for. So I started to read, and I started to, read Bill Yellowrobe, as Tara said. I started to read Mary Catherine Nagel's work. I started to read Spider Woman Theater's work. I started to read Rihanna Yazi's work. I started to read your work. I started to read, I started to read as much as I could. Margot Kane, Thompson Highway, so many folks. And then I realized it's even deeper than that. It's not just the writing, but like theater administration that needs change. There's it says something to me that the only Native play I had heard of was Thanksgiving Play, and there were no Natives in it. A fantastic, incredible play by Larissa Fasthorse, but she also has so many other incredible pieces that center on community. And so I felt like it spoke volumes that the only Native theater that I saw in the city was that. Mm-hmm. So that's how I kind of got into theater in the roundabout way. Native theater, started to get into theater administration as well, which is kind of what I'm exploring right now. And my theater role models, everyone who I mentioned, I was very lucky that Ty Defoe first off, I was very lucky that Mauricio Salgado, who is not Native, but an incredible theater person who engages in theater, person who does so many incredible things. I really should later on, I know what questions are coming, so I'm saving it. Mauricio, if you're watching this, it's coming. He kind of started to get me in contact with folks that he knew. So like Ty Defoe brought me under his wing, and he was working with Yagawihine Oaks, who was then with the American Indian Community House. Started working with her and Tanis Parento and Opulana Tet Pierce, all these folks who are like currently doing the work right now, not just theater, but also like community-based. I mean, this was right at I'm really going on and on, but this was right at the top of the pandemic. So like getting folks food, getting folks, sanitary, like feminine hygiene products, that kind of stuff too. So those folks were my theater role models. And then also everyone I mentioned before, everyone on this call as well, we're huge role models to me. So yeah.
Thank you, Emily. And I love how you talk about community and theater. I always grew up hearing that stories are medicine. And so I guess that leads to my next question, which is, how does your Indigenous culture influence your work? So we'll start off with Tara.
My work is strictly about my people and my community, and specifically my Seminole Muskogee culture. And again, the way I tell stories are the ways that I was taught. Growing up, those are the ways that my parents were taught, my grandparents were taught, and so on and so forth. And so, it's kind of difficult to try to be like, how is theater influenced by how my people tell stories and how I tell stories, or vice versa or whatever, because they're two within the same. Even the way that I create as an individual artist is very much in alignment with the values that was instilled in me from my community. How I am as a director is very much in alignment with how we treat each other as relations and as individual people, and like whole people who have, sovereignty and agency over their own ways they create, which I'm told is very different from how Eurocentric theater operates. And again, how I write plays also is a very spiritual experience. So, I don't just sit down and write a play. I only write when I feel a connection to my ancestors, to larger spirit of what I need to write then and there. And that's when it comes out. But yeah, so they're just so intertwined and really difficult for me to be like, this colonial theater is influenced by my culture, when the theater I create is deeply rooted within the culture I have.
Thank you, Tara. And we'll go to Isabella. Isabella, how does your Indigenous culture influence your work?
I think it's a huge part of my work. And I think that's just because growing up, like, it's a huge part of, I think, how I think about the world and how I relate to the people in my community and my family and in the larger world. I think I can give an example. So the play I mentioned earlier that I had wrote, I started that process by, I kind of really wanted to do it in a more traditional way. So I started by going to some of the elders in my community to kind of talk about what I wanted to do, because I wanted to use and kind of read and gather inspiration from these traditional Cahuilla stories. And I wanted to make sure that, that was going to be okay. So I went to Ernest Siva. He is definitely a culture carrier. He heads the Dorothy Ramon Learning Center, which is in Southern California. And so he's all about sharing kind of arts and culture. And so I worked with him, and that was actually the first place that we put on the play, was at their little cultural center. And it was like a tiny gathering hall. It's not a theater, but we were just like, we want to do this and we want to put it on in like 2 weeks. So is that okay? Can we use your space? And so he offered that, and he ended up being in the play too. So it was just really cool to be able to work with those people. And so, like I said before, is based on these stories, these Cahuilla stories, and it's called Manuel in Her Heart. And for some context, Manuel is the name of the moon maiden in the Cahuilla stories, and she gives the arts to the Cahuilla people, and so I thought that was just pretty beautiful how it all connected. And so then from these stories, kind of sitting with them and reading them, and kind of trying to not think of them through this colonized Western lens, which I think is the way that, most often mainstream society, we're trying to figure this out. But I think kind of trying to come away from that, which I think hearing about everyone talking about how they relate to theater, I think that's so much of what we're trying to do now too, going back to kind of the beginning of how it began and started in our Indigenous communities. But from there, I thought about how it kind of connected, and I saw this connection to this, to obviously the issue of missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, Two-Spirit people, something that's so pressing, so important, and so under talked about in, non-Native spaces. And so I think from there, it was just like, well, how are we going to put this up? And that came by going back to community. And so it ended up being, I think, like 20, a cast of about 20 people. So it was pretty big, but it kind of grew as we went on, and it was all non-professional actors. And I was in it, my family was in it, a lot of families too. So I think it was pretty intergenerational, which was neat. And so I think that, that is all about culture. When we go back to it, it's really about how we relate in community. And so I think, even on a scientific or medical level, when I was doing some of that in college, when cultural components are added to wellness practices for mental or physical health, Native communities heal more quickly and more effectively. And I think that you can apply that to storytelling too, and finding that meaning in theater, if that's what you're interested in and want to explore. And I think it's also about like not tying Native artists to anything or about owing the audience anything in particular or a certain kind of perspective. But I think just allowing that space to open up of accessibility just allows for those authentic stories to kind of come in, and from there we can all draw on that, right? It just makes us all stronger. And so I really appreciate all the Native spaces that are just about let's work together, let's grow this, and let's kind of think about all the unique perspectives that we live in, because I think as Native people, we're constantly fighting against, there's this one Indigenous experience, and it's like from this movie that was created like 50 years ago, but that's obviously so different. We all come from totally different communities. Our tribes are so different, but also just the way that we exist in this Western society can be so different. And so I think theater really allows a place for like to expand that and to allow that to come forward. And for me, that's often through culture. But so I think that I'm just really grateful that I've had that help, and I have that to go back to.
Well, thank you, Isabella. And we're grateful that you have that to go back to, because it reflects in your beautiful work. So thank you so much. Emily, how does your Indigenous culture influence your work?
So firstly, I just want to say, Isabella, I can't wait to research you more avidly right after this. It sounds like you're doing some incredible stuff, as everyone is on this call. I think for me, the thing that I'm just going to come out swinging a little bit. So, I currently live and work in New York City. The big, I feel, standard is Broadway. Everything is kind of, it's like it's Broadway or it's off Broadway or it's off Broadway. And that's like the theater ecosystem. I recently-ish in my work found out that all 42 theaters on Broadway are owned by about 5 different families and companies. And the families and companies have owned those theater spaces, owned that land for a long time. So if you do the math and you're thinking who could own land, who was able to own land in New York City at that time, the demographics become kind of, I would say, similar to a lot of other places in the United States and around the world, in places that have been colonized or dealt with colonization. And these theaters do play a role in what gets to be put up and what doesn't, and have for all this time. Producers go to these theaters and make a case for why their play should be put up. So even while we begin to, talk about inequality, talk about systems of oppression at work at all levels of theater making, and people love to talk about it in the nonprofit world, and just kind of say, for-profit is a different beast. We live in a capitalist society, yada, yada, yada. There is a group of people who are curating what we are consuming as an entire country. And those folks have been the same for generations. So even as things begin to change microcosmically, I'm constantly thinking, how does land ownership play into this? Because that's kind of, I don't know, that's how I was raised. That's like the histories that I was grown up on, removal and all of this and allotment and what you have and what you don't have. And, the strength of a nation based on how they were able to navigate those systems. And that sovereignties kind of become very tied to land ownership in certain ways, or not, the ways that we engage in that dialogue. So for me, I would say that's the thing that I'm really like interested in, concerned about, is how do we draw attention to these systems in place, these things that kind of get covered up as we clamor for better representation, as there's kind of a call for authentic storytelling. What are the ways in which those stories are still being curated, those stories are still being forced through what I would call a settler gaze? And when I say settler gaze, I mean that we live in a settler state in which land is being illegally occupied. And oftentimes when Native people tell their stories, especially on the stage, the audience to which they perform in these grander space, like, larger, not community-based spaces, are for a majority settler audience. And that their gaze, the way that they look at that piece, is actually an act of violence, in my opinion. So for me, my work is all about, how can I shed light on this, or how can I engage with people who have been shedding light on this for generations? Where are ways in our practices that we can begin to challenge that? How can we decolonize our practice of theater making, of theater producing, not just in the non-for-profit world, but also in the for-profit world? What are ways that theater can nourish the community, and artists can be nourished and live on a living wage instead of on a non-living wage? So yeah, I think that was a huge brain splat. I don't know if that was cohesive at all, but that's kind of what I'm thinking about lately and what my work is focused on.
Oh, I love that. And I love the history of Broadway and who are telling the stories and who decides what stories get told. And I love that you are actually studying this. I feel more people should, so that we can disrupt the system. You don't know how the system's working, you can't change it. So I applaud everything that you're doing. So thank you, Emily. Isabella, you are currently concentrating in English while on a pre-med track at university. Can you tell us more about your play Mule in Her Heart and how you incorporated storytelling as medicine?
Yeah, so I think, like I talked about earlier, I think a lot of that healing really comes from community. And I think, within a lot of Western modalities of healing, it's really about an emphasis of separating those two things. And we obviously are seeing in Native communities that these methodologies of Western medicine aren't working in Native communities. We have so many disproportionate rates of illness across the board. And so I think, as I said before, I think that there's a lot that's so inherent in our stories and our teachings about healthy ways of living that are just so missing from the world today. And I think that, that Indigenous wellness and kind of cultivating that in community is really vital. I was just working with a First Nations group in Canada, and it was kind of a 4-day self-care kind of wellness women's group. And we got to learn about all the traditional medicines and how, the right way to harvest them in terms of, how you think about what you're asking of this plant, or how you're making this tea or this sleeping mask. And I think that really just put it all into perspective for me, and made me think about my work and, the artistic world, and how I think that can really be a place that can be so nourishing. But like, I think we've been talking about often in the Western world, it's really kind of the opposite of that. And it kind of breaks you down. And I think that in Native spaces that we can really use it to build up. And I think especially for youth, I mean, I think it can provide such a great place to find a voice or to find a passion. And Emily, you were saying you were shy. I was also, I think I'm still shy, but I was super shy when I was little. And going on stage was the one place where I felt like, I'm telling the story and I'm taking on this kind of different persona that's not totally me. And so I can kind of relate in that way. And so I think that can be healing too, even when you're young, and how we define healing can be tricky, and it can be interesting. But I think, in terms of Mule in Her Heart and that play, obviously it dealt with a very heavy issue, and it was something that's, really painful in community. And we have there's one scene in the play at the beginning that's a protest scene where there's kind of names that are listed of real women, because that's really what the play is about and who it's for. And it's kind of a growing list too, because we have a talk back at the end of every performance where audience members can kind of just, kind of talk in a facilitated kind of dialogue. And sometimes we add names, or sometimes cast members will want to add names because of their personal experience. And while that's really, it's devastating and it's really horrific, I think it's like, if they want that name on there to be able to have that, I think, and to be able to kind of share that community as like, this is something that we're all dealing with, and this is something we're all going to try to change, I think can be really powerful. And I think it's also, going through this process has made me think about how we can think about theater as being actionary and trying to create something coming out of it. And so, for example, with the play, we have buttons and we have infographics that we created alongside Abigail Echohawk, who did the foremost kind of data research on the MMIW issue. And so working with her was incredible, because she's like, this is what you can tell the people who see the play to do. And this is, maybe that we can create a change that way. And so I think that was just like the marriage of that it feels so Indigenous to me, because I don't think, like we were talking, science and art and activism and advocacy are not really separate in, Native communities. It doesn't have to be one or the other, or they have to exist in these separate worlds. And so I think bringing that all together is I think what can be exciting for people and kind of inspire that. And I think on just kind of a simpler level, maybe, or just kind of a more personal level, when I think about the play, and we're still performing it, and I think we just did our 14th performance of it for the California state legislator by invitation of Assemblyman James Ramos. And that was like a full circle moment, because I was like, wow, we started this play and we wanted to create this change. And now we're here, and with pretty much the same cast. So that was really cool. But it was also the first time we'd performed the plays in live since the pandemic. And since the pandemic, we'd lost a couple Quora cast members, people, that I was really close with, my family members too. And so, being able to do that again, even though there was these gaping holes like that these people would have filled, I was just really grateful that I got to share this experience with them. And I have those memories of that, and that they chose to be involved and to give their time. And so I think that kind of really just instilled to me how much of a community you can create in this play and in the theater world, and kind of how storytelling is really bonding. And I think so important on a huge national, global level, but also on a really kind of personal and minute level. And so I think that those are the memories I cherish most of those people, and have helped me get through loss. And I think, similar people might have other same experiences, but like I have a quote that I really like by the Leslie Marmon Soko, Native writer, and she says, "We don't heal by forgetting, we heal by remembering." And I think that is kind of what theater can be too, in a sense, of showcasing that contemporary resiliency and that joy amidst the hard things, of course, but kind of being about creating something that we can go forward with, and kind of bring to the larger world, but also just for ourselves. And I think that's why theater has had such an impact on me. So yeah, that's what I'll say.
Well, thank you, Isabella. Thank you for sharing that. So beautiful. And I love that you are carrying their spirit with you as you tell the story and spread the message. So thank you. And congratulations on your 14th performance.
Thank you.
Tara, your work has both deconstructed and reconstructed existing narratives, but you've also worked to create new narratives. How do you turn these ideas into action?
Yeah, so I am in a place professionally where I'm really fortunate to have other artists and theater companies who just believe in what I want to do and are able to commission me to create the stories that I want to create. And so in regards to how do I make these ideas and turn them into like physical action on the stage. It's from pre-existing relationships. It's from the decade of work I've put in professionally to get to the spot. But in regards to how do these ideas get them onto the page, I mean, again, as I mentioned before, to me, like writing is a very spiritual practice. I joke that sometimes I forget how a play happened and then poof, it exists, because it's just about me feeling connected to my ancestors and telling the stories of them that I want to happen, especially with the current project I'm working on now, which is documenting so many of my family's stories over the past century into like a 7-play cycle. And so a lot of that is just staying open, staying connected, but also staying rooted with my family, on this plane, with my community here and now, and just keeping that muscle activated and just staying grounded within, the Seminole Nation Reservation, Oklahoma, even though right now I'm in New York, or I live in Rhode Island currently. But saying it's true and connected to my roots, my people, my community, has really helped streamline, frankly, that process of here's an idea, and then now here's an existing thing that we can then take to the next place and to the next place and develop in this way and get all these other Native folks involved, and find ways to showcase these stories like to my family who it's about. But I mean, truly, it's just staying connected and rooted to who I am and who we are, puts everything into action, and then of course on top of the having relationships with existing theaters and so on and so forth, and then keeping those relationships also really nourished as well. So I guess the crux of the biscuit, so my people say, is just relationships, both within community and then as well as within community I've built within the larger theatrical landscape.
Thank you, Tara. Emily, can you tell us more about your thesis, Performance as an Act of Tribal Sovereignty, and its incorporation into a new theater studies course?
Yes, I will say the coffee is now hitting my bloodstream in the late afternoon. So if I start talking like the Energizer Bunny, I'm sorry. I feel bad, like I'm lying to people. It's not a real thesis. I wrote it in undergrad. It's an honors thesis. I had done a piece at the end of my second year about my family and my grandmother who had just passed, and also about allotments and the Osage headright system and the murders, because why not? No, that sounds so flippant, because it's horrible and horrifying, and a direct tie between how racist policies, U.S. governmental policies, result in the death of Native folks. And I was so mad because a lot of it was done in community with my peers and my colleagues. And the biggest note that they could give me was, you shouldn't say the word Indian. I was using transcripts, court transcripts, court documents, and government documents. And they were like, you should say Indigenous. I was like, that's the thing that really gets you going after this performance? Not the numbers of people who are dead, not the history, the fact that I said the word Indian and not Indigenous. All right. So I started to get a little upset then. I was like, what? To me, the piece was about sovereignty. To me, the piece was about government actions and things that we could change and things that have been hurting us for so long, that folks have the right and the responsibility to ask for the changes that I feel that need to be asked for, that need to be done on a federal level, not just like a state or even like a tribe specific level. So I started to research that. I already knew I wanted to write a thesis because there weren't any theater studies courses that were specific to Native or Indigenous drama. So I had to sit through, I think, like 2 or 3 honors classes to be allowed to write an honors thesis. So I did that. I sat through a bunch of Shakespeare classes. I think everyone hated me a little bit because I was like, why is he so cool? You know what I mean? Like, I was like, who cares? And they were like, you're not allowed to ask that. So anyways, I sat through very patiently. I wrote on my things. I wrote so much. Went to write my thesis. There were no Native there were no Native theater studies professors. So I asked Mauricio Salgado, who's mestizo, an incredible director, artist, subversive mind, working as an assistant arts professor, and also now the director of applied theater and the program manager for the Office of Diversity Initiatives at Tisch. Just incredible person. He helped me dig my teeth into not only a huge legacy of Native theater that's been going on since longer than this country has existed, but also all of these pedagogies around resistance, decolonization, radical structures of breathing and caring for one another that enabled me to really dig into this question of what is it that when somebody sees me perform, the whole time they're comparing me to what they think a Native person should be saying and doing on stage. How can we break past that? And there are so many artists, including DeLanna, including Isabella, who have been doing this work. So I just kind of wanted to draw attention to that. And that's why I wrote my thesis about it. And then Mauricio was like, we should make a course. And my course is really about that, about like the settler gaze and partnering with it and this, history of folks who have been subverting it. So yeah, that's what that's about. It's kind of like a long-winded way of saying that, but yeah.
That's incredible. Thank you so much, Emily. I'm so inspired by all the work that you all do, and I'm sure everyone that's watching is too. And I'm going to ask the question that everyone wants to know, which is, what is next for you? Where can we find you? How do you see your work growing and changing? We'll start off with Tara. Tara, what's next for you?
So, what a question. I have a lot of things I'm working on right now. One being a 7-play cycle. I'm calling it the Oklahoma cycle. So 7 plays, all Native, all the time, set in Oklahoma, centered around my family's history over the past 100 or so years, which is really exciting. We have 3 that are written that were just produced. We have 2 more that are about to be done. Anyway, so that's really great. I also have a solo show I've been developing. It's not quite to play. I say it's not a play and I'm not an actor, but it has the intention to tour nationally and to disestablish Columbus Day on the national level, because I'm over it. Anyway, so it's a really exciting project that is really community-centered and action-centered. So it's not quite a typical theater play you may just come see and go home, but one where audiences are fully involved and action happens in the theater as it's happening, which is really exciting. And then I guess finally, why I'm in New York right now, I'm working on a brand new musical that is going to be commercial, which is very exciting. And I can't give too much away, but it is about settler colonialism, which is really exciting, under the guise of Mark Twain. So I'll just leave that for now. So stay tuned. But yeah, so many things are next. But what I hope is really next is that I'm able to dedicate more time to spend at home in Oklahoma. That's the thing that's really the top of my mind, is getting back to Oklahoma and back to Seminole Nation, and just getting a little bit more grounded since things have opened up a little bit more. I haven't been as home as much as I would like to. So that's what I hope is next. And I think that's where I would like to keep.
Thank you, Tara. And we'll go to Isabella. Isabella, what's next for you? How do you see your work growing and changing?
Well, I'm definitely excited for it to grow and change. I think first thing is I'm going to obviously complete the undergrad degree. So right now I'm trying to figure out where do I want to go after that? And that's really exciting because I think I'm just so inspired to be on this panel, to listen to Emily and to Tara and to and to you, DeLanna, because I think I just didn't realize there's so many avenues that you can go down, until pretty recently in the last couple of years, just wow, there's so many ways that you can create your own thing and that you can put up your theater and you can create all this amazing change. And so that's really inspiring to hear too. But I think definitely theater and I think I'm interested in film too. So for instance, the play I wrote, Manual in Our Heart, I'm writing it into a screenplay, and that's a big project that I have over the summer with a fellowship that I have. And so I'm working on that, and that's a whole different kind of mode of storytelling. And so I'm trying to figure that out. And I think that would be a cool way to see it evolve and change. And I think, one thing that's exciting is the roles in film are really opening up for Native actors. And so that's exciting. There's just in the last couple of years, just seeing these TV shows that really center Native experiences and Native actors. And so that's exciting too. And so that's opened up way more for me than I had ever before. And so that's been a really exciting kind of momentum to ride as that continues. And so I think I always will have a love for theater, though. And I think writing plays is really kind of at a center of my passion. And so I'm just continuing with that and hoping to create more work and do some more acting. And I have a younger sister, Sophia Madrigal, and she's also a playwright and actor. And she and I are working together to kind of create kind of a space for Native plays and things like that in the community, run workshops and stuff. And that's super exciting and something we're continuing. And I think it all kind of started back at the beginning when we were reading these stories. And so I'm excited to move forward and to see what happens, because I feel like every day something changes. And so I also just want to say thank you to everyone for doing all the work they're doing, because I feel like everything you do paves the way to allow more things to happen.
Well, thank you, Isabella. Emily, what's next for you? How do you see your work growing and changing?
Well, first I want to say, see, Mom, this is why I wanted a sister. Isabella, I'm so jealous of you. My brother plays baseball, which is outside with bugs in the heat. Okay, so just had to get that off my chest. I wish I had a sibling that was gonna do the art stuff with me. That's so cool. Yeah, no, what's right now, I am Madeline Sayet's cover for her show Where We Belong, which is touring nationally. So when it comes to you, you should really check it out. I don't remember off the top of my head where it will be this month in November. But it was in Philly and it was in Chicago and it's all over the place. And if you didn't get to see it, then you should fly out and go see it. So, and hopefully I will never go on. So that's what's going on right now. I'm exploring the world of theater administration. Want to learn more about that. Want to learn more about what sustainable support looks like for Native storytellers. I think it's irresponsible when folks just ask for more representation on the back end instead of realizing that public school arts funding has been cut in a lot of the communities from which we're asking for representation and stories from, and that is another system of colonization, of extraction. So that's one thing that I'm working on. I'd love to write more, but that's scary. I'd love to keep seeing more people's work. So please keep producing them so that I can see it in my area. And I also am getting into dramaturgy, and I'll just do a really quick thing about that. I think it's so important that we have Indigenous dramaturgs and that we have Indigenous critics, because I'm so freaking tired of reading a review of an Indigenous work of theater that discounts and discredits all the work, the skillful choices that those artists are making, because they don't adhere to the Eurocentric Western aesthetics that critics are holding them up against. So that's also something that I am working on now, is really being angry about that. Oh, and also in terms of work growing and changing, I feel like I've spent the majority of my time right now, and like in the past, in my youth, I'll say, even though I'm still very young, angry. And I'm hoping that I'll grow and shift and find joy. Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Emily. And you will grow and shift and find joy. As someone that's older than you, I can say it's very frustrating at times, but at the same time, you can see change happening. And, for me, it's always knowing that it may not happen in my lifetime, but hopefully it'll happen in yours. And just to know that there are young people coming up that carry the values so that we are always here is enough to keep me going. Gratitude is a shared value and practice among many of our communities. So I'd like to end our time together by giving each of you a chance to express your gratitude to someone who's made a meaningful difference in your life. Tara, we'll start with you.
Just one. There's so many. There's folks on this call. I think I would love to extend my gratitude to Madeline Sayet, especially Mohegan theater maker, director, writer, and as well as performer of her nationally touring solo show Where We Belong. Maddie was someone who I looked up to when I found out that Native theater artists existed. And I went down a huge Google deep dive and I learned about DeLanna and so many other people. But with Maddie, what I love so much is that she was also a director, and that's what I wanted to do. And now over the years, we've become colleagues and friends, and she has really helped by sending opportunities my way, and giving those back to me. And then now I'm in a position where I can pass on the opportunities to other folks. Anyway, so I just have so much deep gratitude for Maddie. And if you're watching, thank you so much, Maddie, all the time. I know we're friends now. It feels kind of weird, but I still feel oh my gosh, it's Maddie all the time. Anyway, but huge thanks to her, because again, I wouldn't be where I am now and have the relationships that I do if it weren't for folks like Maddie, but Maddie especially, who took me under her wing, gave opportunities, hired me on projects she was working on, and such like that. And so really it just takes so many people. And she's one of those who I'd love to thank today, who got me to where I am. And I will see her very, very soon, as we are all the time, all the Zooms, all together. Bye, Maddie. See you all the time. See you later. But yes, but huge Mado to Maddie. And also you all look her up. She's great. Madeline Sayet, she's wonderful. Hire her too.
Mado, Tara. Isabella?
Yes, this is such a good question. And I saw it and I was like, wow, yes, I've never been asked this on a panel, but I feel like it's so important. And I feel like it has such cultural significance too. I have so much gratitude for my community, for my family. To name someone in particular, my father, I think, growing up, he was really such an inspiration to me. When I was doing plays when I was little in elementary school, he would come to all of my performances, and he drove me to the art school that my sister and I wanted to go, that was an hour away from where he lived, so that we could do that. And so he just embodied so much of what I want to be. He was also a cultural carrier in the community, and in the 80s, I believe, he led kind of an effort to revitalize the Cahuilla birdsong tradition. So he had an arts grant with a group of men, and he garnered the mentorship of kind of the last 3 tribal elders who knew them. And it was hard to get them to teach him, I think, because there's so much history there of losing so much culture because of cultural eradication and all of the things that have been lost or misused. But he was able to do it, and so he kind of actively tried to bring these songs back into the community, this way of coming together, but also these beautiful songs, right? And that's an art form in and of itself. So, and today I go to all these cultural gatherings, and there's always bird songs, and it's a huge thing. Lots of people sing and dance, and so he kind of was big on the songs, and that really inspired me to kind of think about the stories, and he kind of pushed me to think about those, and that was a real big inspiration for me in writing the plays that I write, and helping to kind of bring it into fruition. He was in the play too. He played one of the characters, and so that was a really special thing that I got to have with him. And then, as I kind of mentioned before, during the pandemic time, he passed away, and so to be able to still have those memories and to have that, and I think that's something that has really helped myself, and I think my family and everybody kind of who knew him. So I have a lot of gratitude for that, but I think huge gratitude for the community too, because, when he passed, I think we all there was a big kind of sense of that shared grief. And I think that was something that really got me through it, to be able to hear those stories about him. And it just reminded me of the importance of stories, and how, allowing people the space to share those can can really heal and provide a way to move forward when you think it's something that you can't, get past. And so I really want to express gratitude for all of those people, and for him, and for my sister and my mom and everybody who was helping me with that. And for everybody on the panel too. I was just like super grateful for everything that you guys are doing, and all the things that you're creating that I'm going to be like, oh, I wish I had that when I was like growing up in school. But so excited that other people are going to be able to have that.
Thank you, Isabella. It's a beautiful tribute. Emily.
Yeah, I mean, I've said his name a couple times, but Mauricio Salgado, his beautiful son, Eliseo, and his partner, Cindy, who always kind of was the one who's like, wait a minute, when we were coming up with our course, was incredible. Mary Catherine Nagel has been such a huge support. DeLanna, you've been such a big support, and I'm so grateful for you. Madeline Sayet, Tara Moses, who's also on the call. So many folks. But, I've been thinking a lot about my mom. My mom's going through kind of a hard time right now. And she recently asked me, are you mad at me for the way I raised you? Which is a crazy question to hear. I know I come from a long lineage of folks, as everyone does, several Native women who've had to make impossible choices. And I'm grateful for the choices that they made. And I'm grateful for the strength that they carry and carried. And I hope that I'm able to bring that forward. I'm really grateful to my mom and for the sacrifices she made. And I hope the sacrifices that I make are the sacrifices that I make, that I do from a place of gratefulness for the ones she make. I hope that it continues the never-ending chain.
Thank you, Emily. I love that we all have more than one person that we're grateful for and that helped us on our journey. And I love that the reinforcement of the fact that we are never alone on our journey, and that we always have someone there with us. And so I am very grateful to be on this journey with all of you. And so I just want to say thank you to all three of you for reminding me of the joy in the work that I do and why I keep doing it, and hopefully why there will be more Native theater out there for all of us to enjoy. So once again, thank you so much. We have so much to learn from you, and I look forward to seeing what you bring to the future. So Wado, thank you.
Thank you, DeLanna, Isabella, Emily, and Tara, for this incredible conversation and for sharing your knowledge with us. Follow our panelists online to learn more and support their work. Visit the resources you see here to learn more about Native experiences and voices. In addition, thank you to everyone that has attended and worked on our Youth in Action series, and those that came before us to make this possible. For more information about upcoming Youth in Action episodes and to explore other ways that you can enjoy the National Museum of the American Indian from home, visit us at americanindian.si.edu. Thank you for joining us.